everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. Today we'll be talking about a very special film, a very comforting watch that is perfect to watch on a cold autumn day. We'll be talking about 2018's Little Forest, directed by Yim Soon-rye. You might be wondering why I'm talking about Little Forest when it's sort of an old film. So let me just tell you why. Maybe if you are in London, you know that the London Korean Film Festival started on the 1st of November and is taking place until the 13th of November. And the festival actually has two strands. So one is Cinema Now, focused on new releases, and the other is Women's Voices, dedicated to screening films by female filmmakers. And when I was reading the program for the festival, I remembered an article that I read earlier this year. So earlier this year, the Korean Film Council released a report that said that only one out of 35 Korean commercial films released last year was directed by a woman. And that one title was The Point Man with Hyun Bin, directed by Yim Soon-rye. So if you don't know anything about Yim Soon-rye, she is considered to be the most prolific female filmmaker in Korea. And I absolutely adore her because she's very opinionated, she's very good at capturing the nuances of being human. She talks a lot about animals and nature, and she approaches feminism in a very different way. So I absolutely adore her. I think she's fantastic. And if you don't know anything about her, I encourage you to Google her and, check online, check her filmography. Maybe you've already watched some of her films, but I think one of my favorite films directed by her is definitely Little Forest. So Little Forest was released in 2018 and it's actually based on a manga by Igarashi Daisuke. So this manga was adapted into two films directed by Mori Junichi and released in 2014-2015. So the leading actress was Hashimoto Ai. And so the manga, they divided into two films. So it's a two-part film called Little Forest Summer Autumn and Little Forest Winter Spring. And when Korea decided to adapt the story, they decided to make just one film. So, quick disclaimer, I haven't read the manga. So this video is 100% about the film adaptations, okay? Now, I might spoil you a little bit. So I might add a couple of spoilers here and there, nothing huge, but well, just to let you know. So if you don't want any spoilers, maybe stop here, watch the film, and then come back. So regardless of the version, Little Forest feels like a warm hug on a cold day. And I'm gonna start with the Korean version, and then we're gonna compare the two versions a little bit. So Little Forest tells the story of Haewon, played by the fantastic Kim Tae-ri. Haewon was raised in this countryside village by her mother. She lost her dad when she was very young. And when she was about to graduate high school, one day she comes back home and she finds a letter written by her mother saying that she was, going to live her own life. So she leaves the house, her mom, and leaves her alone. Haewon is heartbroken. And then after she graduates high school, she decides to move to Seoul. And she spends a few years there, and after failing to pass the national qualification to become a teacher, she decides to go back home. And back home, she meets again her two childhood friends, Jae, played by Ryu Jung-yo, and Yoon-suk, played by Jin Ki-joo. And then Hye-won, with this relationship with her friends and the relationship that she establishes with nature, Hye-won finds, I think, the peace that she needs to move on. I think she finds the space that she needs to figure out who she is and keep on going with her life. So Little Forest is a carefully crafted film that offers a mostly sensorial experience. As you hear the sounds of the environments, the birds, the wind, and you see the colors of the trees and the flowers and the food that bring life to every single shot. And as the characters act and react with the food that they eat, they cook and they eat, we actually feel the film. It's like we can feel the breeze, we can smell the flowers, we can taste that warm soup on a very cold day. So Hye-won's journey ends up being our own journey as we experience the discoveries and the development of this character. So as Hye-won experiences the seasons in the countryside and lives her life according to the seasonal changes and enjoys, of course, this relationship with her friends, her perspective of life completely changes. She goes through a journey of discovery, not just self-discovery, so not just discovery of her own self, but discovery of her mother. And she nurtures this newfound love towards herself, towards the people around her, towards the village, towards nature. So the film, the Korean Little Forest is actually, let's say, it actually relies on 4 different things. So 1, Little Forest is a visual ode to nature, to its colors, its shapes, its rhythm. Number 2, food is a way of expression. So in Little Forest, food is a very, very, very important element of the story that gives space to the characters to express themselves. Number 3, Little Forest, in a very subtle, very delicate way, it approaches a very current social issue, which is the rat race. The pressure that young people feel to find a job, to be successful. And number 4, which might be my favorite, Little Forest, the cast of Little Forest is composed of pretty much women. You mostly have women in Little Forest. And all of these women, they are just so incredible. They are portrayed with such heart and realism and depth. So they are all very three-dimensional, very well-rounded. But it's not only these characters, these female characters individually, but the relationships that they create between them, especially between Hye-won and Yoon-suk, her friend, and Hye-won and her mom, played by the marvelous Moon-suri. So Little Forest is pretty much these 4 things combined that results in such a marvelous film that visually, the film mirrors nature quite a bit. So you have the pace of the film is very slow, but not too slow. Slow enough to allow for understanding and growth. And the colors are so vibrant and the compositions all feel very organic. The score is very comforting, and of course you have the sounds of nature, the birds and the water and the wind. All of these sounds come together to create this this environment that embraces you. And then you have these very beautiful wide shots that show the beauty of nature throughout all 4 seasons. And you also have medium and close-up shots that bring us closer to the characters, but also bring us closer to little details that make nature such a charming and enchanting character in this film. So nature is also a character in the film. And all of these together, it just creates this very, very immersive, wonderful experience. So the narrative follows this very quiet rhythm as Haewon slowly but surely takes steps towards her future, and she lets the different seasons present her with something new. I think the film, the narrative of the film focuses on internal conflict. So you have Haewon, who is this girl that never came to terms with her mother's departure. And then she goes to Seoul and she fails her exam. And when she was growing up, she dreamt of the big city as this exciting place that would offer her everything that she wanted. But then she realizes that, you know, life in the big city is not that straightforward. Her part-time jobs exhaust her, don't pay well, don't offer her any sense of accomplishment. And then the food is expensive, is always prepackaged. She doesn't have time to cook. And so after she fails the exam, she feels completely lost. And then she goes back home and she realizes that she's still, of course, hurt because of her mom's departure. Because growing up, you see that Haewon and her mom, they had this very tight-knit relationship. And it's wonderful to see how they lived together. They lived off the land. And, you know, her mom was very supportive and very loving and provided her with this very, very loving environment for her to grow up in. So Haewon lives her life with this mix of anger and disappointment and curiosity and pride. And this is the protagonist that we have. We have this girl who grew up within the giving arms, the kind arms of nature, nourished by her mom's excellent cooking, but dreaming of this exciting life in the big city. And then everything sort of falls apart and she finds herself lost. So this is the Haewon that you are presented to, you are introduced to in the beginning of the film. She's completely lost and she's hungry. I love that the film starts with this conversation between Haewon and Yoon-suk, in which she says, I came back because I'm hungry. I'm so very hungry. Because hunger in this film, hunger in Little Forest, is a metaphor. She's not just physically hungry, she's hungry for answers. She's hungry, you know, because she wants to understand her mom, she wants to understand herself, she wants to understand what she wants from life. So this whole idea of hunger leads to cooking. So cooking in Little Forest brings people together, but it shows that cooking can nourish not only the body but also the soul. So Haewon was raised by a mother who poured all her love and dedication into her dishes, into cooking. And through her cooking, her mother expressed her love, her care. She gave Haewon hope and comfort. And sometimes the cooking even helped the makeup after fighting. So cooking is a means of expression, it's a means of communication. And after Haewon becomes an adult and she starts cooking her mom's dishes, it is through recreating her mom's dishes that she reestablishes a line of communication with her mom, and that allows her to understand her mom. And it allows her to stop seeing her mom as just her mom and start seeing her as an individual, a human being with her own desires, her own needs. And that allows her to forgive her mom for leaving, which also gives Hae-won the freedom that she needs to understand who she is and understand her own desires. So Hae-won, through cooking as an adult, she not only reconnects, let's say, with her mom, but her cooking also expresses her love towards herself. So it's a means of self-care, but also it expresses her love and I think gratitude towards her friends too, because she cooks she doesn't cook only for herself, she cooks for others too. And she uses cooking as a way to express this love and care towards her friends as well. So here we have three perspectives. So we have our protagonist, Hae-won, that she comes back home looking for answers. She comes back home because she wants to hide from the world. She's reached her limit, she's had enough, she doesn't know where to go next. And she is scared of facing things head on. It's very nice because it sort of reminds me of Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, a book that we've already talked about here in the channel. So this is our protagonist, and then we have two different perspectives that sort of that support her this character arc that Hae-won has. So first, she has her friend Jae-ah, who also, after he graduated high school, he also went to Seoul. He found a job, suit and tie, but then he realized that this wasn't what he was looking for. He realized that, maybe life in the big city is something, too artificial for him. And it doesn't allow him to live his life the way that he actually wants to. So he decides to quit his job, go back home, and start farming. Because for him, life as a farmer would allow him to design his life the way that he actually wants to. So returning back home to Jae-ah wasn't escaping. It was an active choice that he made. So he understood who he was, he understood what he wanted, and he makes an active choice to come back. So the village is not escape, the village is the answer that he was looking for. So this is one perspective that Hae-won is introduced to. And then you have another perspective, which is Yoon-suk's perspective. So Yoon-suk dreams of the big city, but for one reason or another, she decides to stay in the small village that she grew up in, and she finds a job at the local bank. And you see that the problems that she faces at the local bank at the end of the day, they are the same problems that she would be facing if she moved to Seoul and found a job at a different, at a big bank in Seoul. So it's interesting to see, and this process with Yoon-suk shows Hae-won that, sometimes you make a choice and you fight for that choice. Even though there are things that you don't like about it, it doesn't mean that just because you don't like one thing about something that you're gonna quit, you're gonna stop, you're gonna let it go. No, sometimes you need to fight for it. Sometimes you need to, fight your way through it. And that gives Hae-won another perspective. And these two perspectives together sort of shape her character arc. But I think the thing that I love the most about these three together is this is female friendship done right. Because very early in the film, when Hae-won goes back to the village, Yoon-suk tells her that she's in love with Jae-ah. So Yoon-suk is in love with Jae-ah. And she makes her intentions very clearly. And of course, it's natural that she feels a little bit like, look, he's mine. So she makes her intentions very clear. And Haewon, she doesn't really have that sort of interest in Jae-ah. So she actually encourages Yoon-suk to pursue him more actively, more openly. Like, go on, tell him how you feel about him. So it's fantastic to see this female friendship without that stupid male influence. It's so natural, and it's so heartwarming to see them together, because the three of them, they have this very beautiful relationship going on, this sort of familial love that is wonderful to witness. And I think especially Haewon and Yoon-suk, it's beautiful to see how much they love and support each other and embolden each other. And together you see they are helping each other understand what they want from life and how to give shape to their lives. So it's really, really nice to see this relationship between the two of them. Now, when it comes to the performances, what should I say here? I mean, Kim Tae-ri, she is endlessly talented. She's just so expressive, and she leads Little Forest with such soul and such strength. You see that she skillfully navigates all sorts of emotions. She goes from fear to courage, from joy to sorrow, from innocence to maturity, in a way that is fantastic to watch. Also, Ryu Jung-yeol and Jin Ki-ju, they also deliver very entertaining performances, full of heart. They are full of personality. But I think my favorite is definitely Moon Suri. She embodies this mother who seems to know all the right answers to everything. But at the same time, she's a very loving parent with a very strong personality. You know, she's not just a mom, she's a woman. And I love that. So she gives this very nuanced performance, and I absolutely adore that. Now, when it comes to differences between the Japanese and the Korean film, I feel that the Japanese version of Little Forest and the Korean version of Little Forest, they are very, very similar. Of course, the story is pretty much the same. So they are very, very similar, but at the same time, they are completely different films. Completely different. What I love about them is that the Korean version is very Korean, and the Japanese version is very Japanese, so they embrace this cultural aspect, and I really like that. So at the end of the day, you have two unique perspectives of the same story. It's very nice to watch them, because you notice that some shots are exactly the same. The score is very similar, and I think the photography of nature is equally stunning in both versions. It's just beautiful. You have these beautiful places in Japan, beautiful places in Korea. Now, when it comes to the Japanese Little Forest, Ichiko is the protagonist in the Japanese version. She's a much more introspective protagonist, which results in a much more sober and pragmatic film, let's say. So the Japanese Little Forest is focused. So Ichiko's story is focused on her relationship with her hometown and her sense of responsibility towards her community. And her story is pretty much told through narration. You have a lot of voiceovers in the Japanese version. Meanwhile, in the Korean version, Haewon's story is not only a story about self-discovery, but also about motherhood. in which Haewon comes to understand the influence that her mother has had on her, the love that she has received, but most importantly, she comes to understand the individual that her mother is beyond her role as a parent. And I think that gives the film extra beauty, the narrative extra beauty. And of course, this story is Haewon's story, is told through dialogue. So you have a lot of dialogue, and the dialogue is always very witty, very sharp. So I think this is a very, very big difference between the two versions. So the Japanese Little Forest is a lot more straightforward and a lot more focused on the natural environment, on the processes of harvesting and cooking. Ichiko's relationship with her mom plays a very, very, very small part in the film. Her friends don't really show that often, they don't really show up that often. So you see that there's this very big difference between the two versions. I think the Japanese Little Forest focuses on, because Ichiko is she leads a very solitary life, but that's not really bad per se. You know, she's very happy, you know, in being alone. She doesn't mind. So I think the Japanese Little Forest is about, you know, the joy, the enjoyment, the peace that you can find in your own company. It's very nice to see, you know, how she teaches the audience how to cook and how to live in sync with nature. And well, the Japanese Little Forest, you have pretty much 4 hours of content there. And during these 4 hours, you have a lot of repetition. So it sort of reflects the repetitions of the seasons and the repetitions of nature. So you see Ichiko repeating the same habits in different seasons, but repetition is key for the Japanese version, because when Ichiko realizes these cycles, that leads to her final realization at the end of the film. So the first 2 hours, they are not very dramatic. You don't really have a heavy storyline to them. But then the last 2 hours, you have a heavier storyline with a very neat ending, actually. While the Korean version is much more character-driven, the Japanese version is much more about this relationship between people and nature. It's also interesting to see how much more modern the Korean version feels, because you see Haewon using a smartphone, you see her friend saying that he learned how to farm through the internet. But the Japanese version, you don't have any of that. It's funny how the Japanese version seems to be completely oblivious to the existence of the internet, of technology. It's literally living life with nature, with what you have around you. So they are both slow-paced films in which the protagonist learns how to live in sync with nature, with the harvest. I think both films explore different facets of the female identity. I think most importantly, both films appreciate and explore the role of food in our lives. That is not just about, you know, feeding this body that we have. Food is about expression, and it's about nourishing our souls. But I think the last thing that I wanted to mention is that something that I find very interesting is that while Yim's cinematography, so in the Korean version, while the cinematography is a little bit more traditional, in the Japanese version, I feel like they pay homage to the source material. You have a lot of montages, and you have a lot of split screen, and it gives the film this sort of manga aesthetic to it, which is very, very nice to watch. So highly recommended, all of them, all three of them, for different reasons. I think if you're looking for something a little bit more cheerful and a little bit more about, you know, the bonds that we create with others, I would go for the Korean version. I would go for the Japanese version if you're looking for something a little bit more introspective, more about, you know, nature, you know, the peace and quiet of nature, and, you know, spending time with yourself. You know, it's just you, and that's it. So, but they are all very, very nice. I think they are very comforting watches for this period of the year when it's nice, cold, you know, get a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and grab a blanket and let's go watch Little Forest for sure. Little Forest is a magnificent essay on self-discovery, on understanding what truly matters in life, what we really want from life. It asks these questions. You know, you finish those films and you start asking yourself, are we just letting ourselves be carried away? Are we actively making decisions that reflect who we are and what we want in life? So I think Little Forest continues even after you finish watching the film. So we're done for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like this video and you subscribe. And well, yesterday we had a post on the Blossom Review about Lighthouse, which is a Hoshinogen talk show / documentary out on Netflix. Because last week we talked about music videos and we talked about A-list to playlist. So I thought that this week would be nice to talk about Lighthouse. And on Friday, Mr. Plankton is coming out on Netflix. So that's probably our topic for next week. We'll be talking about Mr. Plankton. So I hope you stop by the Blossom Review, and I hope you stop by our YouTube channel next Thursday, so we can continue discussing K-dramas, J-dramas, and everything related to Korean and Japanese media. I hope you have a fantastic day today and a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you very soon. Thank you very, very much. Bye!